بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight we're going to start inshallah, which is titled Tools for the Student of Knowledge. Tools for the Talib Ilm. In the book itself, that's not the title of the book. The book is called Ya Talib Ilm. And it's a book that gives advice to the seeker of knowledge. To the seeker of knowledge. It's giving advice to the seeker of knowledge, and it's broken down into 4 different parts. The first part, inshallah, is the part that we're going to cover. And the other 3 parts, inshallah, maybe we'll go through them. I don't know yet, Allahu A'lam. But all of my advice on how to learn. How to learn. As the second part, it says on the title of the book, Kifayah Tahfaz. How does a person, what's the best way to memorize? How should a person memorize? Kifayah Taqra. How should a person read? Or Kifayah Tafham. And how do you understand, along with some other general benefits. By Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad al-Sadhan. Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Sadhan, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. And Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Sadhan, if you read through his biography, from his scholars, as it says, from his shuyukh that he benefited from initially, Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, rahimahullah Ta'ala, and Sheikh Abdullah ibn Aqil, rahimahullah, and Sheikh Abdullah bin Humayd, rahimahullah, Sheikh Abdullah bin Jibrin, rahimahullah, Sheikh Abdullah bin Hudayan. We don't know who these mashayikh are. We should take down their names and try to find out and read on them and see their level. From the scholars that are living, Sheikh Salih Fawzan is also from his mashayikh, his teachers, and the mufti of the Mamlaka now, Sheikh Abdul Aziz Ali Sheikh. Hafidhahumullah. So, firstly, and this is not a trick question. It's not a trick question. What is a talib? What is a student of knowledge? Or what is understood when a person says a student of knowledge? Anybody? What is a talib ilm?
Active in the pursuit of knowledge.
A person that is active in the pursuit of knowledge. Like Jade, a person that is active in the pursuit of knowledge. Like now, the next question, because that's wide, right? That's general. So now, a bunch of people could be active in the pursuit of knowledge. What type of knowledge are we talking about? Knowledge? Huh? Beneficial knowledge. Kitab al-Sunnah. Sharia, knowledge of the Sharia. Knowledge of the Deen. Right? Specifically, even though if a person goes to school for medicine, or to be an engineer, or to be a doctor, to be a mechanic, or to go to some type of trade school, that's still knowledge that they're seeking, but it's not the intended knowledge that we're talking about here. So now, if people are active in the pursuit of knowledge, pursuit of Islamic knowledge, understanding the religion, the next question is, if there's 15 people in the room, is everybody on the same level? Of course not, right? Of course not. Of course everybody's knowledge and everybody's level of knowledge is not on the same level, but that doesn't remove a person from being under the umbrella of being a talib ilm, of being a student of knowledge. Clear? Because you know more than me, you've memorized more than I memorized, you've been studying longer than I have, doesn't mean that you're a student of knowledge and I'm not. Right? Or vice versa. And the next person, so forth and so on. So the question is, now, talib ilm, seeking knowledge or pursuing knowledge, what is the Islamic ruling on pursuing knowledge, learning the deen? Number one, do we know what the Islamic ruling consists of? If we don't, alright, the Islamic ruling, if we say what is the hukm on something, the Islamic ruling, then we got 5 choices. It could be one of 5 things. Either it's halal, or when I say halal, let's say use halal. Let's use halal. But halal is super general. It's not the term you want to use. Alright? Let's say wajib, obligatory. Either it's obligatory, or it's muharram, or it's haram. Let's use the opposites. We're doing the opposites, maybe they'll stick. Either it's obligatory to pursue knowledge, or it's haram to pursue knowledge. Either it's permissible, or it's impermissible to pursue knowledge. Or it's obligatory, or it's haram, impermissible. Right? Those are the 2 choices. Number 3. Or it is mustahab, recommended. Or it's recommended, or it could be makruh. It could be disliked. Everybody with me? Or it could be the 5th one, mubah. And they all have meanings specific to the term. Tayyib. Of course, and it depends on the knowledge you're seeking. Some knowledge is haram to learn. Some knowledge is not permissible for Muslims to study and learn. Tayyib. Some knowledge is open, mubah. You can learn it, you don't have to learn it. Some knowledge is recommended to learn, right? Some knowledge is obligatory to learn, and we miss one. And some knowledge is disliked. Tayyib, what is the ruling, the hukm on pursuing Islamic knowledge? Out of those 5, obligatory. Tayyib. Obligatory. J. If we say it's obligatory, then it's going to be a hole. We're going to come into a problem eventually. So we got to say that it's detail to the answer. The answer got some detail to it, which we really just said. It depends on the knowledge. Not all knowledge is obligatory on every person. Clear? Some knowledge is obligatory on some people, and it's not obligatory on other people. Everybody with me? Tayyib, after that, we move to what the ulama break down into 2 parts, the different types of knowledge. And this is important because some people are going to read the title and say, well, I'm not a student of knowledge, so I don't need that. I'm not a person pursuing to learn my deen. That's what the Categorizing is. A seeker of knowledge, a person that's pursuing information, seeking something, or seeking fahm, understanding of the deen. So a person takes the general term we're used to hearing, tolerant, student of knowledge, and they say, well, that's not me, so I don't need that class. Right? Possible? Huh? Very possible. That class must be for a specific group of people. I'm not from that specific group of people, so I don't need that. Tayyib. When in reality, every Muslim, male and female, falls under the umbrella of student of knowledge to some degree. To some degree, every Muslim man and woman fall under the umbrella of a student of knowledge, a seeker of information, a seeker of fahm, understanding the religion. On what level? Out of the 5, on an obligatory level. Everybody with me? Every Muslim, there's some things that are obligatory. Obligatory that nobody, no Muslim man or woman is excused from. Tayyib? Like what? Huh? Learning the salah. What else? Tahara, knowing how to make wudu, knowing how to make ghusl. What else? Fasting, the most important thing. Hajj, the most important thing. Learning Tawheed, learning who Allah is. Like those things in that category is what the ulama classify as fard ayn. Fard ayn. Fard ayn. It's important to know because people want to read and say that's tools for the student now. Well, I'm not a student of knowledge. I don't need that. That's for the students. But every Muslim falls under the umbrella of being a student of knowledge when it comes to the knowledge of fard ayn, which is knowledge that is obligatory on every single person. Nobody's excused from learning what is a tawheed and what is shirk. Nobody's excused from that. Nobody's excused from understanding and knowing how to make wudu properly. There's not one person, we can't stand up, right? Or sit down, I don't feel too good, and you say to somebody, you know what? I need you to do me a favor. I need you to make wudu and pray Maghrib for me. Right? Is that possible? No. That doesn't exist. Islamically, it don't exist. You can't have somebody stand and do that obligation that we have to carry out as individuals and have somebody else can do it for you. I need you to stand and pray Maghrib for me. I need you to help me make wudu, pour the water for me, maybe. I need you to sit me up, turn me towards the Qibla, maybe. I need you to make wudu, you make wudu on your own body and make it count for me? No. You stand and pray Maghrib and make it count for me? No. So there's things that have to be, every person, nobody's excused from learning Tawheed, Iman Billah, belief in Allah. Right? Nobody's excused from learning how to make wudu. Nobody's excused from learning how to pray, and the rest of the pillars and the other things that, as the ulama explained, there's things that a person they can't practice their deen without knowing those things. A person can't live as a Muslim without understanding this portion of knowledge. Because there's some things that you may be able to not know and still live as a Muslim on a daily basis. You with me? Some things you could not know for 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years maybe. And it doesn't affect your day-to-day worship as a Muslim. Like what? Or your year-to-year worship. Like learning how to wash a body. Or learning inheritance. How to break down inheritance when a Muslim dies. Right? Everybody clear? What if I don't learn? What if a person been Muslim 30 years and they don't know how to wash a body? I'm not saying you should do that, but what if that happens? Does that affect how they worship Allah on a daily basis? The correctness of the worship. If the worship is valid, if the worship is invalid, the fact that a person doesn't know how to specifically wash a body, it doesn't affect their day-to-day worship. But if a person doesn't understand what Tawheed is, right, and what is shirk, right, we worship every day. So this is going to affect the person's worship from the crux. From the core of the worship is going to be affected by not knowing that. So it's not allowed, it's not permissible for any Muslim not to know that portion of knowledge. Everybody with me? Whether you call yourself a student of knowledge or you don't call yourself a student of knowledge. Whether people call you a student of knowledge or people don't call you a student of knowledge. The title is not important. The title is not important. What's important is the reality. And the reality is that nobody's excused from knowing how to make wudu properly. And brothers and sisters that are married, nobody's excused from ghusl. Right? For the people that are married. Now, if a person's not married, then it's possible that they don't immediately need that knowledge. Possibly. And it's possible they do. It's possible they do. So the important thing is not the title. Because people might see the title and say, well, that's not me, so I'm not in need of that. But in reality, everybody falls under that category to some extent. To some extent. So that first category, fard ayn, nobody's excused from it. We got to make sure that those are the things, in reality, those are the things that we should start with when we learn. When we start learning, we should start with those things that fall under follow the ayn, that I can't practice my deen without knowing these. I can't live life as a Muslim day to day without knowing this information. The second category is called Fard Kifayah, which is generally a communal obligation. It's an obligation on the community of the Muslims. Not every Muslim has to do it. Not every Muslim has to know how to do it. But some of the Muslims have to know how to do it. And if some of the Muslims don't know this, then all of the Muslims are sinful. Clear? This portion of knowledge, the ulama explained, is not on an individual basis. Mathalan, for example, it's janazas every day, pretty much in the city, 3-4 times a week. When a Muslim dies, do all of the Muslims have to go wash the body? All of the Muslims in the city got to show up to the funeral home and wash the Muslim, woman or man, child, right? Do all of the Muslims have to wrap the body? Do all of the Muslims have to come pray janazah? No. It's not an obligation for all of the Muslims in Philadelphia. When somebody dies and the janazah is announced, it's going to be a janazah tomorrow after Dhuhr. It's not an obligation for every single Muslim to go pray that janazah. Should the Muslims go pray? Of course. We should go pray over our brother or our sister and pray for Allah's mercy on them. But we talk about hukm. What is the ruling on Salat al-Janazah? As the early men say, it falls into the second category, not the obligation on each and every individual, but as a community, some of the Muslims from the community got to stand up and wash the body. If nobody washes the body, then the Muslims are all sinful in that area. Am I clear? Same thing for a lot of different areas of knowledge. The obligation on every person, which makes every person a talib and a student of knowledge to that degree, is learning the fault of the ayn, the things that we can't function as Muslims without knowing. Clear? Any questions so far? Tayyib. This book, in the first portion, is going to deal with something that we all need. Every person needs it. So what he does is he deals with the tools for the student of knowledge in general, and then in the other portions that come after that, he goes into specifics of how to do it. So this first portion, nobody, as we can say, nobody, I won't say that, everybody needs it. Everybody needs this portion that we're going to go over inshallah ta'ala. So he opens up in the introduction, and he gives some benefits on, of course, the benefits of knowledge. And what is one of the main benefits of learning? Huh? To implement it, remove the ignorance from yourself, and implement the knowledge. Not just gathering a bunch of information. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Quran hujjatan lak aw alayk. The Quran is going to be a proof for you or a proof against you. The Quran itself, the book we say we love. It could be a proof for a person or a proof against a person. If a person acts on the knowledge in the Quran, then it's a proof for him. If we don't act on the knowledge in the Quran, then it's going to be a proof against us Yawm al-Qiyamah. So he says, firstly, that knowledge, the virtue and the benefit of knowledge, it allows a person to worship upon basira, and you know what you're doing. But you don't have to wait for people to tell you what to do. Right? If we're not tired of that already, we don't have to wait for people to give us the green light. Can I do this or no? Right? It's based on why we don't know. Once you learn how you got the green light, you got the source. You go to the source. You sit, you learn, you get it from the source, and then you keep moving. Now you got the green light. If you don't know something, you come to something else you don't know, you do what? Stop and seek more knowledge. Get more information so that you can implement it. So we're not going to go through the whole muqaddimah, but it's a couple things that he mentioned, and one of them was the status of learning, the status of knowledge, the manzila of ilm. That knowledge is something that is supposed to be held in high regard, something honorable to do, as we say. A person gains stripes. There should be stripes given in our language. It's given. There's no stripes in being ignorant and not knowing nothing. Right? The honor Islamically comes from learning who Allah is, learning the halal and the haram, learning the fiqh. Not just what the hadith says. What does the hadith mean now? What does that mean? Not what is it translated to mean. How am I supposed to implement it? Tatbiq, which is a different level. Memorizing is one level, but understanding it is another level. That's why a person could memorize Quran. They can memorize Quran. It doesn't mean that they understand the rulings in the Quran. It doesn't mean that the person is a hafiz, that they necessarily understand the halal and the haram. It's a different level. Hifz is one thing. Memorizing is one thing. Understanding is another level. So he says it reminds us, it's a reminder of the Salaf al-Salih, الَّذِينَ قَطَعُوا أَقْطَارَهُمْ شَرْقًا وَغَرْبًا شِمَالًا وَجُنُوبًا فِي تَحْصِيلِ الْعِلْمِ. And we got to think, he said it reminds us, if you look at the lives of the Salaf, that they traveled, as he says, in all directions across the world, north, south, east, west, in order to learn. Right? If we don't know this, you got to go to the biographies. You got to read biographies, and this is one of the points he's going to bring. He says, حتى بلغت همتهم أن يرحلوا شهرا من أجل حديث واحد. And this we got to think about. That the Salaf al-Salih, when you read their lives, you find that, and it's not nothing that's strange, it's not something that is not known. They traveled 1 month, a month worth of travel time. How long did it take to get to New York? 2 hours. Later, Virginia. 4, maybe 5. Later, Ohio. 6, 7. Let's go Florida. 12. Atlanta. 13. Cali. A couple of days, right? No, driving. Let's go driving. We want to go to least, not flying. 18. Right? Driving. 18 hours driving. Now we got to go back 18 hours? I think it's longer. A lot. 30. Yeah, it's a little longer. It's at least a day. At least a little longer. That's not good. 30. Let's use the most difficult way to say outside of walking. Driving. 18 hours. Right? Driving. 30. Let's use driving because when we talk about the Salaf, they didn't even have cars. We're not talking about going from here to New York. We're talking about going from country to country. Maybe they had a horse to ride or a camel, maybe they didn't. But one thing for sure is they spent money to travel. Now the question is, what is in that information that drives a person to travel for 1 month, in order to hear something from a person that might take them 10 minutes to tell you. One hadith, if you put the chain of narration in it, the isnad, let's say 10 minutes. Reading the whole chain, depending on the length of the chain. Let's say 10 minutes, right? To travel a month's time to get information from a person that takes 10 minutes for him to tell you. Right? You got to say, what is in that information? What's so important and golden about that? Everybody with me? You see the picture? You got to read the biographies though. Right now we got, mashallah, we just click buttons. We click buttons, right? And it's free. The apps are free, so you only got to pay for a lot of them. We just pushing buttons, right? That a person spends their money to travel for a month. Not 18 hours, not a day or 2 days to Cali, A month's time to get one hadith. طيب? So now the question is, why? What is so important in that knowledge that a person will sacrifice traveling a month's time to hear, let's go high, let's say 20 minutes. To hear 20 minutes worth from a person, you travel 1 month. Everybody with me? And this is how the Salaf were about knowledge. Heck what? Excuse me. Forget all of the talk. All of the titles and titles you're going to put on your name. If you read their biographies, it was serious. They took learning serious. You don't find, with the Salaf Salih, you don't find, I'm not a student. Oh, that's not. You don't find that mentality at all. You find respect for the tulab, the students. I'm not talking about y'all, the students that we know of today. I'm not talking about people who are on paper as students in a specific university. People who are striving to learn. People who are in the pursuit of learning. This is a Paul ilm, and nobody is exempt from it. Right? There's a certain portion of knowledge, nobody's excused from it. So it's upon every person for those aspects of knowledge to seek it. If the people, from the time of the Salaf, if they weren't tulab, as we say, if they weren't students, if they weren't people who were highly pushed to that level of traveling 1 month, then they were what? Worshippers. At the least, they were known for worship. Known for worship. What people knew them for when they mentioned their name, he's an Abid. That's why when you read his biography, it says Abid. He's a worshipper. He was from the worshipers, the people that were known to fast, like a lot of fasting. They were known to pray a lot outside of the 5 rak'ah, nawafil. That's what they were known for. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean he was an alim, he was a scholar, or she was a scholar. But they were known for worship at the least. That's why they said Imam Ahmed's class, rahimahullah. Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, he was an Imam Hadith. He's narrating Hadith. 5,000 people show up to hear the Hadith. 5,000 people come to the class of Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah. They said only 500 was actually what we say as writing the Hadith. But the other people, what they say? Us and them, we got to compare the mentality. It might not be me or you, but the mentality that's floating around. Well, I'm not from the students of Hadith, I'm not going. No, the other people who weren't from the students of Hadith, they weren't from the students of Imam Ahmed, they weren't tulab al-ilm, as we say. They went, as they say, just to benefit from Imam Ahmed's character. Just to benefit from his ethic. At the least, I got to benefit something. Right? With the Salaf, you didn't find them with that attitude, that's just for the students, that ain't me, I'm regular. Right? I'm just a layman. What that mean? What does that mean? I'm just a layman. We got to be careful, because the shaitan is deceptive. I'm a layman, so what? I'm just regular, so I can do what? What does that mean? What does that put me in front of Allah? I'm a layman. What does that allow me to do since I'm a layman? Because I heard brothers say, listen, man, I ain't no student, I ain't doing all that. I hate that shit. That's from the Sunnah. Who implements the Sunnah? Muslims, not students. Muslims implement the Sunnah. The people, the students as we know now, the students of knowledge that we know, they should be the first to implement the Sunnah. But the Muslim, the Sunnah is for the Muslim, not just for a specific group of people. Right? So, he says, in that point you find, and this is another thing he mentions in the Muqaddimah, this is why you find, he says, وَقَدْ أَلَّفَ أَهْلُ الْعِلْمِ فِي ذَلِكَ مُؤَلَّفَاتٍ. The ulama, they wrote, there's tons of books written on this, just on seeking knowledge by itself. It's a whole section in your library on seeking knowledge. How many books are written? Like the famous book of, as he says, from one of the most famous, traveling to seek knowledge, to seek hadith. Traveling to seek hadith by Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah. Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi. He said that's one of the most famous books, and there are other books along with, as he says, just reading the Tarajim. along with just reading the biographies of the ulama of the past. If we read the biographies, starting going back, as far as you can possibly go back, starting with who? Starting with the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and then the Sahaba, and after them, because sometimes another shubha, another mistake, but that was the Prophet. Like, he's not our example, but that was the Prophet. But they were the Sahaba. They could do that. They were the Sahaba. But no, that was then. They were this. No, you can come back further and further. If you look, you'll find plenty of people. They were humans, right? That they sacrifice. It's a sacrifice. And if you keep in your mind that a person spends 30 days of travel to hear 10 minutes of information, well, let's go high. To hear a half hour of information, and that's all you get. That's it. You travel 30 days to get a half hour of information. What's in that information that will push a person to travel that far, to travel that long? It's something to think about. So he says after that every person that's trying to learn needs, as he says, let's just say a program. Because another problem is, I don't know if y'all experience, but a lot of people experience, I know I experience, a person says, I'm all over the place with my reading, my study, I be all over. Start this book, I read 20 pages, the next thing I know I'm in another book, and I never finish. Right? Right? Because there's a program. There's a manhaj, there's a way that you do it. Right? It's a specific course that, if we start from the day, people like Sheikh Ibn Baz, they didn't just wake up. It's the mufti of the country. He didn't wake up like that. You read his biography. He went to middle school. He went to elementary. He went to middle school. He went to high school. Right? Meaning he's a normal person. Right? He's a normal person. You read Sheikh Ibn biography. Right? They have the schools that they went to, the teachers that taught them. Maybe Sheikh Abdul Aziz Satan as where he went to school, what school he transferred to, who were his teachers at that school, he thanked his teachers, right? These are normal people. But what separates people? The drive and the understanding. If you understand what you're seeking after, it pushes you a little more. But a lot of us don't respect knowledge. We don't respect knowledge due to a few reasons. One reason is a lot of us weren't taught to respect knowledge. We weren't taught to respect educated people. A lot of us were not taught to respect educated people. We were taught to respect people who are, what? Not educated. Allah understand. Allah forgive us. But it's the reality. We were taught to raise people who are uneducated. And the people who are educated, right? So we come to Islam and we start finding out, wait a minute, it's okay to know stuff. Like, I can be educated and that's good, right? Secondly, we might not know what it means. What does it look like to respect somebody who's educated? And that comes from, brothers, that comes from exposure. It comes from exposure. If you haven't seen anything, then it's hard to picture. It's hard to picture a 7 or 8-year-old memorizing the entire Quran who's not an Arab. Finished the Quran by 10. Right? They read the biography, he finished the Quran by 10. At 10 years old, he memorized the entire Quran. A person might say, well, how do you do that? How does a person do that? If you've never seen it before, if you never saw it before, then. But if you actually witnessed it before, you see it's doable. But it's a way to do it. It's doable, but it's a certain way you have to go about in order to reach the goal. It's not haphazard and just all over the place. It's a certain way that you have to do it. But he says, this first portion is discussing the things that every person in pursuit of learning needs. The portions after that are a little more detailed for the situation. For example, what should you do when memorizing? So the second portion is all on memorization. Then the other portion is all on reading. Then the other portion is all on understanding. How do you know if you understand or not? How to understand it. But the first portion is on general. Whether you're memorizing, whether you're reading, whether you trying to understand that you're going to need these things. We all going to need these things regardless. Everybody clear? That's why he calls them the shared things. The things that we're studying about. These things are shared, every student, every person, in pursuit of learning. Is that how he said it? Pursuit of learning is going to need. Because we don't want to get caught on the idea. Don't get caught on the idea, I'm not a student. Meaning, I didn't go to Medina. I didn't go to Mecca. I didn't go to Medina. I wasn't in Egypt. I didn't go to Yemen, so I'm not a student. That's a false notion. Those are students on paper. But it may be people who didn't go anywhere that are stronger than them. It's possible. All of it is from the tawfiq from Allah. All tawfiq is from Allah. So, if we look at it as all of us have to be students regarding that first section of knowledge, which is what? What is the first section? Fara'in, which is what? The individual obligation on everybody to learn. If we look at that part, all of us are collaborating. Everybody's a student of knowledge to some extent. Nobody's excused from learning. So there is no I ain't a student. And you get in a situation, right? You get in a situation, and it's from those things that we're supposed to know. But carrying the attitude, I ain't a student, then you can't get to that information. So we'll start with the first thing. He says, Al-Amr al-Awwal. The first thing that every person is going to need, ad-du'a. Ad-du'a. Making du'a. As we shouldn't think that because who we are, that we're going to get it. Without Allah's mercy. Without Allah blessing us. And without Allah giving us that understanding. Because I am who I am, I just got to do this and it's going to work. If y'all only knew how many students go to classes and sit with the mashayikh. They sit in the class. They sit there. They there. They got books and they got paper. And they looking at the sheikh too. But when you talk to them on the side, don't understand. They ain't understand nothing the sheikh said. They might have notes written down. But if you look at the notes, this is for people who are not scared to be exposed. Because people who are scared to be exposed, they don't want you to see their notes. They don't want you to see it because they don't want you to know what they don't want you to know. I don't want you to know what I really don't understand. So I don't want you to see my notes. So what I do, I ain't really writing that like that. Right. Did you hear such and such issue? Yeah, but that, you know what I mean? That was I heard that issue before. What was it? I mean, it wasn't really that much. Talking like, it wasn't really that. But if you're not really scared, if it don't bother you, yeah, this is what I got. This is what it was, just like that. And then he might say or she might say, well, I thought it was this. They might challenge what you understood. That's a bit much. That's another level. Either you understood it or you didn't. Well, wait a minute. Now, this is the reality of the situation. It's possible that what he said, it could be understood like that. Dang, I ain't look at it like that. So who's right now? Right? It becomes a gray area. And when it becomes gray, that means you need more what? You need further clarification. Because it could mean what you said, it could mean what I said. So it don't mean just because you sit down and you open books, you start reading that you're going to get some faith. Clearly, you're going to get some understanding. That the tawfiq is from Allah, and that's why dua is something that we can't leave off. As he says, the dua, by Allah's mercy, yaftah ma kana mustaghliqan. It opens up things that were previously closed. The doors that was closed, things that were difficult, the dua makes it easy. Things that we thought was far-fetched, they become easy with dua. That's why we can't think that we're exempt, we don't really need it. I pray all five in the masjid, so I don't really need to make any extra dua because I pray when I'm in salah. Like, I don't know where that kind of stuff comes from. It's a mistake, but we need to mention it so that we know exactly what we're talking about. So there's nothing that's not clear. طيب. It says many of the ulama have written plenty of books discussing the importance of dua and the status that Islam holds in dua. And he says the talib, the one who is trying to learn and pursue that knowledge, he says, "Min ahwaj al-nas ila dua." This is the person that is in most need of the dua. We can't think based on whoever we perceive ourselves to be, that we won't get it just because we follow the program. I followed all the steps, as one of the Talab asked Sheikh Syid Abu Saajid. He said, I learn and I sit and I memorize, and I'm not able to do such and such and such. Sheikh said, Hafidullah, everybody doesn't come out a hafiz. Everybody who goes down the path of being a talib ilm or a sheikh, they don't come out as a talib ilm or a sheikh. Some people, they benefit what they benefit, and that's where it stops. It's all from Allah. All of it is from Allah. So it's not like we all gonna go to Medina, we all gonna graduate, or we all gonna go to Quran and graduate, we all gonna come out, we all. No, you could be there at the same time with the same people in the same classes. Possibly get the same grade on the test. It's possible. But the tawfiq is from Allah. The understanding comes from Allah Jalla wa Ala. That's why we can't think that because we've been Muslim for such and such years, or we've been around for how many years, that we're good. That is all from Allah Jalla wa Ala. He says, secondly, al-amr al-thani, al-ikhlas fil maqsad, being sincere. And this is something that probably we could do a whole discussion by itself on ikhlas, sincerity. And what is sincerity? And what does sincerity look like? And what it doesn't look like. And the first thing he says is not to look for any praise from people. Don't look for any madh. Nobody should be coming to learn or going wherever you're going to learn for any praise from anyone. Not even from your wives, not even from your husband, not from your kids. That you shouldn't, no way that we should care if somebody praises us or not for doing what we're doing. It's ibadah, it's worship. And our worship is only for Allah. We don't need any praise from anyone. That's the first thing he says. Don't wait for the praise from people. Because what happens when they stop praising you? If you're doing it for praise, when they stop praising you, then what happens? Then you stop seeking ilm. With any type of worship. If they stop praising you for doing that worship, then the worship stops with the praise. And that can fall in a lot of different categories. Wallahu a'lam. But something that I noticed personally, and I won't say that's the reason, but we don't obey Allah for praise from our spouses. We don't grow beards because the woman I married likes men with beards. Because what if y'all get divorced and the next woman don't like men with beards? You gonna cut it now? Right? So ibadah is sunnah. Right? We don't do any worship. Our women, the sisters, you don't cover only because your husband likes you to cover. That's not your reason for covering. It shouldn't be your reason for covering yourself. Covering, wearing hijab, is ibadah, is worship, is obedience to Allah. Covering yourself is obedience to Allah. We're not talking about the details of covering. We're talking about the covering, the bare minimum of the body being covered. Let's just say overgarment and khimar. Overgarment and a scarf. Right? That's what we know to be the general covering. I'm not saying you can't wear anything other than that. Just keep it simple. Overgarment and a khimar. That overgarment and khimar, a woman wearing that is from ibadah, it's from her worship of obedience to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Now, your husband might say, well, I really like this color. I would prefer if you wore this, right? But that doesn't deal with the origin of your covering. So what happens when y'all fall out? What happens when y'all fall out? Well, if he like you to wear a certain color, y'all get divorced and you ain't wearing that color no more. Right? And everybody notices. We assume she shot out that she don't wear what? Black. She don't wear black, she must be shot out. Which is another mistake. But the reality is the reality. So, and that's just the color. But what if you covering it? If you're covering because of him, what happens when y'all fall out? Does the covering stop because that's a problem? So none of our worship, not even the people closest to us, should be for anyone except for Allah Jalla wa Ala. And he said this is the first thing. هذه من أول مهالك والمعاصي في طريق كل عبادة. He said this is the first thing that destroys a person and the first type of disobedience in every worship. Not just learning. Every form of worship is for Allah only. Not just seeking knowledge, not just learning. Any form of worship is all for Allah. And if we attach things to people, when the people don't come through for us, then that worship falls off. He said after that the hadaf, the qasd, should only be to seek Allah's pleasure. And we got to apply that when we're learning. All of this needs to be applied when we're learning. We don't go anywhere and sit in any class. And it might sound crazy, but it happens. Some people, they go to class and they just look around. They want to see who's there. They do it. And then if you're not there, and when they see you, they say, oh, I didn't see you at the shit class. Where was you at? I was there. I saw you looking around. You didn't see me. You know what I'm saying? I was in the back in the cut watching you, not watching you, but you up front. They might be up front. They might be right in front of the sheikh. Right in front of the sheikh. And I'm in the back. I didn't get there early enough. Allah forgive me. But I was in the back. I was there, but you was looking around, so I don't know what you was doing. You with me? This point is the second point, ikhlas. Ikhlas. All this is under sincerity. We're not going nowhere for people to praise us. We're not learning for people to say we know this and he know this. We're learning to remove ignorance and implement the knowledge. Get closer to Allah. He says after that the ulama have explained the importance and the status of learning. And he mentions here an important point that some of the tulab, بعض طلبة العلم إذا عارض النية مرارا قد بلغه قد يغلبه الشيطان. Sometimes the shaitan is deceptive. So, as Ibn Jawzi has a book called Tablis Iblis, the deception of the shaitan, that he'll come to a person and play with you. You're not really sincere. You're trying to show off. Right? When we know the best rank for the salat is where? For the men. That's the first. That's the best rank. So a person following that, trying to get that reward, following the sunnah of the Prophet. The shaitan may try to deceive him. He's trying to show off and show the people you're in the first rank. So what does the brother do? Start moving back. Right? Deception from the shaitan. You only learning for people. You want people to see you. Right? So what do he say? He start doing what? Skipping class. No, I'm going to skip next week. Right? The shaitan, deception. He says that a person, he says, the ulama have described and mentioned that this is from the greatest deceptions from the shaitan. Min a'zam tadlis ash-shaytan ala talib al-ilm. This is from the greatest ways that the shaitan tries to deceive the person trying to learn. Try to put something in front of you to block you from learning. Right? That the niyyah is for Allah. If people praise you, if it comes within, that's from Allah. And this is why some speakers are more famous than other speakers. It's from Allah. You know how many ulama it is in Syid? I can only speak on Mecca, Syid and Saudi. That's where I was, that's all I can speak. You know how many scholars are there that people don't know? Like, and when you talk to the scholars, that the famous ones that we know, and you ask them, yeah, you sitting with him? They'll tell you sitting with him? You don't need me. What you come here for? If you mention to a brother, who you say? I don't know him. Right? You know how many people it is? The fame and the name is from Allah. But the qasd is not to be famous. But Allah raises some people. Allah raises some people and make their name, as we say, ring bells, and some people's it doesn't. It doesn't remove any of their status though. with Allah. The people might not know him, but with Allah, if the person is truthful in what they're doing, then their status is high, regardless if the people around the world know him or not. He said this is from one of the biggest deceptions from the shaitan. So the person has to be mukhlis and yajtahid. Just work hard in making sure that we're doing stuff for Allah. And if we're doing all that, it's hard to even focus on people. For real, for real. If you're really paying attention to yourself, right, it's hard to even worry about what people are saying. If you're doing all that, you focus. I don't want to do nothing. Let me make sure. Hold on. It's a narration from one of the Salaf that he was fasting for 20 years. He fasted every other day. His wife didn't know. In this other narration, they say you should always have. Some they say you should always have one form of worship that's just only you know about it. Nobody knows that you do that. Keep that between you and Allah. Narrations, the man was reading the Mus'haf. And if you got to see it, the houses, like they're not like we like living fortresses. You know what I'm saying? The houses, the windows are open. Maybe it's just curtains. Maybe the windows, the screens are open, the shutters are open. So you walk by the house, you can sometimes hear what's going on in the house. So older people walk by the house, they can hear the person in the room reading Quran. Right? So it's narrations where the man said that the man would, if he heard people coming, he would make a noise to make it sound like he just got up. So they wouldn't think he was up worshiping. They would think he just woke up. Don't want nobody to know. Oh. That sounds like a person just getting up, as opposed to them walking by and hearing them recite Quran. In order to protect the niyyah, protect the intention. There's narrations of man, somebody comes in the room, he's reading the Mus'haf, somebody comes in the room, he covers the Mus'haf with a cloth or something, a sheet. That's how they go. Just sitting here. In order to protect the niyyah. Allah forgive us. Amen. He says, so every person has to fight against their own self to make sure we're being sincere. And if we're doing that, really, if we do that, if we even try to do that, there's no room to be worried about what people are saying or what people are talking about. The last one we'll read for the day is Al-Amr al-Thalith. Ijtinab al-Ma'asi. Stand away from disobedience to Allah. Stand away from sins. Problem is we got to know what's a sin and what's not a sin, what's permissible and what's not permissible. Sometimes people doing stuff they don't even know we're not supposed to be doing it. They didn't know it was a sin. That's another problem. He says, this is from the most destructive things. وَهِيَ عَائِقٌ يَقِفُ سَدًّا فِي تَحْصِيلِ كُلِّ خَيْرٍ. It's an obstacle put in front of a person's sins. Disobedience is something that's put in front of a person that keeps them from achieving good. Keep a person from growing, as we said. Keep a person from really benefiting. It's disobedience to Allah Jalla. It says in the student, the person that's trying to learn, which is all of us, it says, ينبغي أن يكون أحرص الناس على ترك المعاصي وعدم قربها. That the person trying to learn should be the person who is the most diligent in staying away from sinning. We're supposed to be the Muslim. We're supposed to be the most diligent and not disobeying Allah, staying away from the haram. Ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه قال ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه إني لأحسب الرجل ينسى العلم بالخطيئة يعملها. He said, Ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه said, I see that a person may forget something from ilm. They forget something. Think about this. How many things have we forgotten over the years? You hear it, you say, man, I used to know that. Right? You say, I see that a man may forget something based on a sin that he committed. This is who? The Sahaba, Abdullah bin Mas'ud. This is how they view sins. As you lose the ilm that you had, whatever you knew, you start to lose it based on disobedience. Right? There's a narration here on Ali bin Khashram, rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, رَأَيْتُ وَقِيعْ ibn Jarrah. Does anybody know who Waqi' is? Waqi'? Nobody? Waqi'? La? Waqi'? is the Sheikh of Imam Al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. The Sheikh of Imam Al-Shafi'i. Imam Al-Shafi'i has that famous line of poetry that he's going to mention right now. But the man said, I saw Waqi' ibn Jarrah, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ بِيَدِهِ كِتَابٍ. He said, when I saw Waqi', he didn't have a book with him, as from the signs of the students of hadith at that time. They would carry certain things. Everybody knew as a student of hadith, right? It's a student of hadith based on certain things they did, the way they carried themselves. It's an honorable trait. Carry yourself like you seeking what? Knowledge of what? The greatest end, Sharia. And a person travels 30 days to receive 10 minutes worth of information. So they saw him and he wasn't carrying a book like the rest of those people who were doing what he does do, right? Everybody who's doing what you do carry a book, basically. He said, so I saw him and he wasn't carrying a book in his hand. وَكَانَ يَحْفَظْ مَا لَا نَحْفَظْ. And he used to memorize what we didn't memorize. He didn't have a book with him, but he would memorize what we didn't memorize. He says, فَعَجَبْتُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ فَسَأَلْتُ. He said, I was amazed at John. Feel me? I was amazed. So, he said, I asked him about it. فَقُلْتُ يَا وَقِيرٌ. He said, Waqi', لَا تَحْمَلْ كِتَابًا. You don't carry a book. وَلَا تَكْتُبْ سَوَادٍ فِي الْبَيَانِ. And you don't write anything down. He used to memorize what we didn't memorize. He didn't carry a book and he wasn't writing anything. You don't carry a book with you and you don't write anything down. And you memorize وَتَحْفَظْ مِمَّا أَكْثَرْ مِمَّا نَحْفَظْ. And you memorize more than we memorize. How? You don't have a book, you're not writing nothing down. طيب. فقال وقيع وقد أصر في أذن علي. He said, Waqi' said to Ali, he whispered in his ear, قال يا علي إن دلتك على دواء النسيان أتعمل به. He said, he whispered in his ear and said, Ya Ali, if I gave you the cure to forgetfulness, to forgetting, if I gave you the medicine, the cure to forgetting things, would you take it? Huh? What'd he say? Huh? He said, Ay wallah, Ay wallah. Ay wallah is like, Ay wallah, like, you daggone right. Of course. He didn't say bella, he said, Ay wallah. Ay wallah. That's like, emphasize. Of course I take it. Qala, tark al-ma'asi. Stop sinning, leave off sinning. All this he whispered in his ear. Then he said, for wallahi, he swore by Allah, ma ra'aytu anfa' lil-hifz min tark al-ma'asi. I haven't seen anything that benefits a person in their memorization better than leaving off sins. I haven't seen anything that helps a person's memory more than leaving off sins. And that's why it says, لذلك جاء فيما ذكر عن الشافعي أنه قال في شعر له. And that's the famous poetry that Imam Shafi'i has when he spoke to his teacher Waqi'. And he said, شَكَوْتُ إِلَى وَقِيعٍ سُوءَ حِفْظِي. I complained to Waqi' about my bad memory. He complained to his sheikh about his weak memory, his bad memory. This is Imam Shafi'i. You know Imam Shafi'i? Huh? Anybody don't know Imam Shafi'i? Imam Shafi'i is who? Four great imams. Which one is he in chronological order? The third. He was the third after? Who's first? Imam Abu Hanifa, and then Imam Malik, and then Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah. Not just he was Imam Shafi'i, you got to know Imam Shafi'i's status, and then listen to the complaint. Imam Shafi'i's status, you got to read how his memory was. Memory was crazy. And he still said to his teacher, Waqi', in his poetry, he said, I complained to Waqi' about my bad memory. فَأَرْشَدَنِي إِلَى تَرْكِ الْمَعَاصِي. So he told me that I need to leave off sinning. Leave off sinning, stop sinning. And then he said, وَقَالَ أَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ الْعِلْمِ نُورٌ. He said, he told Imam Shafi'i, know that knowledge is a light. Knowledge is light from Allah Jalla wa'ala. وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُؤْتَى لِعَاصٍ. And the light of Allah won't be given to a person that's a sinner. Ilm, knowledge is a light from Allah that Allah is not going to give it to everybody. Everybody don't get that. Right? Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah. You got to read Imam Shafi'i's biography and what the people said about Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah. And then understand, he was complaining about his memory. Imam Shafi'i complained about his memory. And then we got to look at how, we ain't got to look at nobody else. We look at ourselves and compare ourselves to them. And inshallah, if we do that, inshallah ta'ala, it'll help us. We'll stop there for the salah, inshallah. Any questions? That was number 3. Hold on.
So wouldn't the benefit, wouldn't the gain knowledge to benefit like your family? Would that take away from the sincerity?
If a person, say it again?
You want to benefit, you want to gain knowledge to like teach your kids or teach your wife to benefit your family. Would that take away from your necessary being strictly seeking knowledge for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
It doesn't take away, but you got to learn firstly for who? For yourself first. You can't teach something you don't have. You can't teach, it's important, y'all. A person can't teach what they don't understand. And this is why a lot of times people teach what they teach. I can't teach you nothing I don't know. Right? And if I do know it, and I feel it's not strong enough, I don't understand it enough, I still can't teach you that. I can only teach you what I'm comfortable with. I know. I know this. Good. Inshallah. I can't give you something I don't have. So I can't teach you about welding. Right? A lot of things I can't. You can't give somebody something you don't have. So initially you learn for yourself. Like Imam Ahmed said, to remove the ignorance from yourself and then those people around you. Because initially you're going to have to explain to them why to go in the bathroom with the left foot first. Why do we take off our left shoe first and put on our right shoe first? What are we doing? You with me? Kids, especially kids, they don't have, as we say, no filter. They just ask a question. You say, that don't make sense. So when I go in the bathroom, going with the left foot, or when I come out the bathroom, come out with the right. Why we got to do that? Just do it. You got it. Right? They're going to ask you a question. So the benefit is that first, you understand it, you know it. And when people ask questions and they get solid answers, as the ulama say, it gives them that comfortability in their heart. It makes sense. Islam makes sense. Islam makes sense. Everything makes sense. It makes sense if you have knowledge. If you don't know what you're doing in some things, that don't make sense. How? How is that? Not that it's wrong or it's not, but I don't understand how that makes sense to you. You ever read a book and it says, this is the sunnah and this is the hadith, right? Or this is the ayah as the proof. This is why it's permissible. This is why it's halal. Have you ever read the ayah and you say to yourself, how does that go with that? Has anybody ever did that? You're like, how does that go with that? You got to look at the front of the book and say, who's this Sheikh anyway? Oh, all right, damn, Sheikh Uthaymeen. Like, with Sheikh Uthaymeen, I know he know what he's talking about. I trust Sheikh Uthaymeen, so I know he know what he's talking about, but that doesn't match. I don't understand how that matches. How does that go together? Right? And you got in front of you the hukum, sunnah, or halal. And you got the dalil, ayah from the Quran. Right? But you don't have what? The fahm, the understand. You don't understand it. It's a different level. So you could read something, it could be in Arabic, it could be in English, it could be in English. You could read it in English, you could read it down, it don't make no sense. To me, Shaykh Uthaymeen use it as a dalil, but I don't really understand. So somebody come and ask you, what's the dalil for that? You say, well, the dalil is ayah, such and such and such and such. They say, oh, well, how's that a dalil? I don't know, Shaykh Uthaymeen mentioned in his book. For real, right? I don't really understand the dalil. But the dalil is there, that's what's used. So understanding the dalil is something, is another level. And you're going to need to understand it in order to teach it to somebody else. You can't teach something you don't understand. So it's not that you teaching your family is, would be out of, or it's not that if you learn to teach your family, not that it's not being mukhlis, but the first person you got to learn for is yourself. It's life. Accidents happen. What I mean by accidents, car accidents, anything can happen. If you learn it for somebody else, what if they die tomorrow? Stop learning? You with me? You learn it for yourself. If you die today or tomorrow, then you die seeking knowledge. Talk about that. You die in the path of seeking knowledge. Like anything else?
Fake name again, son?
Which one? Wakir?
No,
Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Sadhan. Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Sadhan. Hafidahullah. We'll stop there. We'll pick up next week, inshallah ta'ala, with al-Amr al-Rabi'. The fourth thing that is needed, Qira'at Sir ulama, reading the lives and the biographies of the scholars. That's something that will help people learn. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Oh.